At New York Magazine, Jonathan Chait argues that I, among others, am a hypocrite for being less bothered by Texas's end run around the abortion policy constraints contained with Roe v. Wade and its descendants than by Joe Biden's decision to renew the CDC's eviction moratorium. As usual, Jonathan Chait is wrong. If the argument that Chait presents to his readers were an accurate description of my position, his charge would stick. But it's not. Of the CDC's eviction moratorium, Chait writes, later, he continues, the problem is, this isn't actually my view. Rather, I was outraged by Joe Biden's renewal of the eviction moratorium, not because Joe Biden advanced a policy that he thought was clearly legal but likely to be struck down by the judiciary, but because Joe Biden decided to renew a policy that he knew without doubt was illegal, and in so doing, made a mockery of his oath of office. Or, to put it another way, I was outraged by Joe Biden's renewal of the eviction moratorium for the same reason that I was outraged by Donald Trump's stealing money for his border wall and by Barack Obama's DACA order, because, like Obama and Trump before him, Biden had made it clear to the public that he agreed that his actions didn't pass legal muster, and yet, under pressure, he decided to go ahead with them anyway on the grounds that if the legislature wouldn't act, he would. When Donald Trump did this, I wrote, as he makes clear in his piece, Jonathan Chait doesn't believe I really meant this, largely because it would be devastating to Jonathan Chait's worldview if I really meant this. But that's his problem, not mine. When Obama did this, I wrote, in his essay, Chait argues that these positions render my supposed indifference to Texas's law untenable, but herein lies the problem. It is simply not the case that absolutely nobody even pretends Texas's abortion restriction comports with existing law. Why? Because existing law in this context is the Constitution, and a majority of lawmakers in Texas, along with a huge number of other people, including Laurence Tribe, who has written that one of the most curious things about Roe is that, behind its own verbal smokescreen, the substantive judgment on which it rests is nowhere to be found, believe that the Supreme Court precedent in this area is flatly incorrect. That the precedent is constantly challenged, and is currently being revisited by the court in the pending Dobbs case, only serves to underscore the extent to which it remains a live issue. I will concede that this is a tricky area. As a staunch textualist who nevertheless desires legal stability, I struggle with identifying the best way forward when the Supreme Court has plainly lied about the Constitution, as it did in Roe. But it is simply not true that, as Chait suggests, my standard in this area is contingent upon whether or not I personally consider the law under dispute to be good. As I have noted repeatedly, I actually supported the aims of DACA, and I was indifferent toward funding the wall. What I was appalled by, in both cases, was the president's willingness to acknowledge that to act in a given way would be a plain violation of the law, and then to act in that way nevertheless. In the piece on Roe to which Chait so objects, I wrote that, this being so, those who still consider Roe to be the nonsense that it is have no other choice but to keep challenging it. They may have their efforts struck down, and if they do they must obey the court's decisions. But if they candidly think the court is wrong, as it was in Roe, they should say so. As it happens, I do not much like Texas's new law, and have said so on both the editors and Mad Dogs and Englishmen. Quite sincerely, I don't expect Chait to have heard these, so he can't be expected to know this. But, as a general matter, I do not begrudge Texas its run against the status quo any more than I begrudge the efforts of those who try to overturn Plessy or Schenck or any other of the decisions in which the Supreme Court obviously erred. Politicians take an oath to the Constitution, not to the Supreme Court, and there is a material difference between a state official arguing that the Supreme Court's reading of the Constitution is clearly wrong and the president resolving to act ultra vires because he doesn't like the rules that he acknowledges Congress has set. Chait is correct to note that I wrote in angry, ominous, and even hysterical terms when Joe Biden made his decision on the eviction moratorium. But his explanation is off. As with Trump and Obama, I did this not because I thought the policy at stake represented the death of the republic, but because, for the third presidency in a row, we were forced to watch something utterly deleterious, the most famous politician in the land publicly deciding to violate his oath of office, not in an attempt to uphold the supreme law of the land, but in the open knowledge that he was breaking it. Share on Facebook, share on Twitter, share on Flipboard, email this article, print this article. In Law in the Courts, Trump's legacy comes into focus. Trump's legacy comes into focus. Did Texas hand Biden a lifeline? Did Texas hand Biden a lifeline? States, physicians sue to stop Biden administration's sex discrimination policies. States, physicians sue to stop Biden administration's sex discrimination policies. The end Roe deserves? The end Roe deserves?